So, Ancient Fires. It's kind of a Sherlock Holmes meets Fox Mulder sort of story. So this is a series of stories, about 90 stories that were written by Seabury Quinn for the weird fiction magazine back in the 30s. Anyway, Jules de Grandin is an occult detective created by Seabury Quinn for weird tales. Alongside his assistant, Dr. Samuel Trowbridge, he fought ghosts and werewolves and devil worshippers and monsters and serial killers and spirits from beyond the grave. And tonight, in this tale, Ancient Fires, Jules de Grandin and Trowbridge are engaged to investigate strange happenings at a grand old mansion, and we discover that love can survive even the greatest sacrifice. Oh, and you know the phrase, pardon my French? Yeah, well, I'll ask that forgiveness right here at the beginning. Pardon my French. Tiens, friend Trowbridge, this is interesting. Jules de Grandin passed the classified page of the Times across the breakfast table and indicated one of the small advertisements with the polished nail of his well-groomed finger. Regard this avis, if you please, and say if I am not the man. Fixing my reading glasses firmly on my nose, I perused the notice that de Grandin pointed out to me. Wanted. A man of more than ordinary courage to undertake confidential and possibly dangerous mission. Great physical strength not essential, but indomitable bravery and absolute fearlessness in the face of seemingly supernatural manifestations are. This is a remarkable work and will require the services of a remarkable man. A fee of $100,000 will be paid for the successful prosecution of this case. Excel Selfridge, attorney, Jennifer Building, etc., etc. De Grandin's round blue eyes shone with elated anticipation as they put down the paper and regarded him across the cloth. Morbleu, is it not an apple from the tree of divine providence? He demanded, twisting the ends of his diminutive blonde mustache furiously. A remarkable man for remarkable work, do they say? Cordu, but Jules de Grandin is that man. Nor do I in any wise imply perhaps. You will drive me down to that so generous solicitor, friend Trowbridge, and we shall together collect from him these $100,000. Or may I never hear the blackbirds whistle in the trees of St. Cloud again. It sounds like some bootlegger advertiser for a first lieutenant to me. I discouraged, but Jules de Grandin would not be gainsaid. We shall go. We shall most certainly go to see this remarkable lawyer who offers a remarkable fee to a remarkable man. Me. He insisted on this, rising and dragging me from the table. Morbleu, my friend. Excitement is good. Gold is good, too. But gold and excitement together, they are a combination worthy of any man's love. Come, we shall go right away. Once. Immediately. And so we went. Half an hour later, we were seated across a flat-top mahogany desk, staring at a thin, undersized little man with an oversized bald head and small, sharp, bird-like eyes. This seems incredibly good, gentlemen, the little lawyer assured us when he had finished examining the credentials of de Grandin showed him. I had hoped to get some ex-serviceman, some youngster who hadn't gotten his fill of adventure in the Great War, perhaps, or possibly some student of the psychic phenomenon, but my dear sir, and here he beamed on my friend, to secure a man of your standing is more than I had dared hope. Indeed, I did not suspect such characters existed outside of book covers. Parbleu, mon sol Harvey, de Grandin replied with one of his simple smiles. I have been in what you Americans call some tight places, but never have I been shut up in a book. Now, if you'll be so good as to tell us something of this so remarkable mission you wish undertaken by us. He paused, voice and eyebrows raised interrogatively. To be sure. The attorney passed a box of cigars across the desk. You'll probably consider this a silly sort of case for a man of your talents, but, well, to get down to brass tacks, sir, I have a client. I have a client who wants to sell a house. Ah, de Grandin murmured noncommittally. We ought to become indomitably fearless real estate brokers, perhaps, No, not quite, sir, Mr. Mr. de Grandin, sir. The lawyer laughed. Nothing quite as simple as that. You see, Red Gables. Red Gables is one of the finest properties in the entire lake region. It lies in the very heart of the mountains, sir, with a commanding view, contains nearly 3,000 acres of good land, and in fact possesses nearly every requisite of an ideal country estate or a summer hotel or a sanitarium. Normally, this estate is worth between $3 and $4 million, sir. But unfortunately, it possesses one, shall we say, drawback, a drawback which makes its market value practically nil. This place is haunted, sir. It's haunted. Eh, do you say so? De Grandin sat up very straight in his chair and fixed his unwinking stare on the attorney. Pablo, it will be redoubtable ghost whom Jules de Grandin cannot eject for a fee of 200,000 francs. Say on, my friend. I burn with curiosity. Well, the house was built some 75 years ago, when that part of New York State was little better than a wilderness, the attorney resumed. You see, John Aglenberry, son of Sir Rufus Aglenberry, the great-uncle of my client, was the builder of this house. He came to this country under something of a cloud. He was pretty well estranged from his family, sir. He built that English manor house in the midst of our hills as a refuge from all mankind, it seems. As a young man, he had served with the British Army in India, and he'd gotten mixed up in a rather nasty scandal. He went Ghazi. He fell in love with a native girl, and he threatened to marry her. Oh, it was a devil of a row, sir. His folks used influence to have him dismissed from the service and cut off from his allowance to force him back to England. After that, they must have made life pretty uncomfortable for him. For when he inherited a pile of money from a spinster aunt, he packed up and he came to America, building that beautiful house out there in the woods and living like a hermit for the rest of his life. The girl's family didn't take matters much easier than Aglenberry's, it seemed. Something mysterious happened to her before he left India. I imagine he would have stayed there in spite of hell and high water, if she had but lived. Somehow the Aglenberry fortune petered out. John Aglenberry's younger brothers both came to this country and settled in New York, working at one thing and another until he died. They inherited the property share and share alike under our law, but it never did neither of them any good. Neither of them was ever able to live in it, and never could they sell it. Now mind you, I'm not saying it was a ghost, but something damned unpleasant, nevertheless, has run off every tenant who's ever attempted to occupy that place. My client is the young John Aglenberry, great-nephew of the builder of that house and last of the family name. He hasn't a cent to bless himself with, except, you see, the potential value of the estate of Red Gables. That's the situation, gentlemen. A young man, heir to a baronetcy, if he wished to go to England to claim it, poorer than a church mouse and with $3.5 million property eating itself up in taxes and no way to convert it into diamond cash until he can find someone to demonstrate the place isn't devil-ridden, you see. So, do you understand why we're willing to pay a $100,000 fee, contingent on the success of reestablishing Red Gables' good name? Hello, savage. Tiens, monsieur, de Grandin exclaimed, grinding the fire from his half-smoked cigar. But we do waste time. I am all impatience to try conclusions with this property-destroying ghost who keeps your so deserving client out of the negotiation of his land and keeps me from a $100,000 fee. Morbleu, this is the case after my own heart. When shall we start for this so charming estate, which is to pay me my $100,000 for ridding it of its spectre tenants? Now John Aglenberry, chiefly distinguished by a wide and friendly grin, met us at the railway station, which lay some 5 miles from Red Gables, and extended a warm hand-clasp in greeting. It's mighty good of you gentlemen to come up here and give me a lift, he exclaimed as he shepherded us along the path and helped us stow our traps in the unkempt tonneau of a Ford, which might have seen better days, though not recently. My attorney, Mr. Selfridge, phoned me yesterday morning, and I hustled up here to do what I could to make you comfortable, gentlemen. I doubt you'd have been able to get any of the village folks to drive you over to the place. They're as frightened of my house as they would be of a mad dog. But monsieur, de Grandin expostulated, do you mean to say that you have been in that house by yourself this morning? Yeah, last night, too, our host replied. I come up here on the afternoon train yesterday, and I tidied things up a bit for us. I see. And you, sir, you saw nothing? You felt nothing? You heard nothing? De Grandin persisted. Of course not, the young man answered impatiently. There isn't anything to see, or feel, or hear either, if you accept the usual noises that go with a country place in the springtime. There's nothing wrong with the property, gentlemen. It's just a lot of silly gossip which has made one of the finest potential summer resorts in the county a drug on the market. And that's why my attorney, Mr. Selfridge, and I are so anxious to get the statement of a gentleman of your caliber behind us. One word from you, Mr. de Grandin, will outweigh all the silly talk these yokels can blab in the next 10 years. De Grandin cast me a quick smile. He acknowledges our importance, my friend. Truly, we shall have to walk fast to live up to such a reputation as this. Further conversation was cut short by arrival at the gates of our future home. The elder Aglamberry had spared no expense to reproduce a bit of England in the Adirondacks. Tall posts of... Indeed, I think I have blabbed a lot in 10 years. Tall posts of stone flanked the high iron gate which pierced the ivy-mantled wall surrounding the park, and a wide gravel driveway bordered on each side by a wall of cedars led to the house, which was a 2-story Tudor structured with shingles of natural red cedar, from which the place derived its name, Red Gables. Inside, Iris. Inside, the house bore out the promise of its exterior. The hall was wide and stone-paved, wainscoted with panels of walnut and with a beamed ceiling of adze-hewn cedar logs and slabs. A fieldstone fireplace, almost as large as the average suburban cottage's garage, pierced the north wall, and the curving stairs were built with wide treads and balustraded with hand-carved walnut. A single oil painting, that of the elder John Aglamberry, relieved the darkness of the wall facing the stairway. But, monsieur, this is remarkable, de Grandin asserted as he gazed upon the portrait. From the resemblance you bear your late kinsman, you might easily be taken for his son. Yes, pardieu, were you dressed in the archaic clothes of his time period, monsieur, you might be he himself. Yeah, I noticed the resemblance, too, John Aglamberry smiled. Poor old Uncle John. Gloomy-looking cove, wasn't he? Anyone would think all his friends were dead and he was making plans to visit the village undertaker himself. The Frenchman shook his head reprovingly at the younger man's facetiousness. Poor gentleman. He gazed upon the portrait again. He had cause to look sad. When you too have experienced a sacrifice of love, you may look saddened, my friend. We spent the remainder of the afternoon surveying the house and surrounding grounds. Dinner was cooked in a portable camp outfit over blazing logs in the hall fireplace, and about 9 o'clock all three of us mounted the stairs to bed. Now remember, de Grandin warned, if you hear or see the slightest intimation of anything which is not as it should be, you are to ring the bell beside your bed, my friend. Dr. Trowbridge and I shall sleep like the cat, with one eye open and claws alert. Not a chance, our host scoffed. I slept here last night, sir, and never saw or heard anything more supernatural than a stray rat, and mighty few of those. Now, I might have slept half an hour or twice that long when a gentle nudge brought me wide awake and sitting bolt upright in bed. Trowbridge! Friend, Trowbridge! De Grandin's voice came through the darkness from across the room. Rise and follow me, friend. I think I hear Monsieur Aglamberry's alarm bell. I slipped a bathrobe over my pajamas, and I took the loaded automatic and flashlights from under my pillow. All right, I whispered. I'm ready. And so de Grandin and I stole down the hall toward our host's room, and de Grandin paused beside the door. Clearly, we made out the sound of an untroubled sleeper's heavy breathing. You've been hearing things, de Grandin. I chuckled in a low voice, but he held up one hand in warning. Psst, psst, be still. Shh. Do you not hear it too, my friend? Hark, there! I listened with bated breath, but no sound save the occasional ghostly creak of a floorboard came to my ears. And then, faint. So faint it might have been mistaken for the echo of an imagined sound, had it not been for its insistence. I heard the light, far-away sound of tinkle, tinkle of bells. Tinkle, 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 they sounded, scarcely louder than the swishing of silk, every third and fifth beat accentuated an endless circular rhythm. But their music did not emanate from the room beyond the door. Rather, it seemed to me the tiny fairy-like ringing came up the stairway from the hall below us. My companion seemed struck by the same thought, for he crept past me toward the stairhead, his soft-soled slippers making no more noise against the hardened wood floor than the beating of a moth's wings against the night air. Close behind him I slipped, my gun and flashlight held in instant readiness, but at the sight of his eager, strained face as he paused at the top of the stairs, I forgot my weapons and stole forward to peep over his shoulder. A shutter must have come out unfastened from one of the small high windows in the hall, for a patch of dim moonlight, scarcely more than 3 feet in diameter, lay upon the floor directly beneath the portrait of the elder John Aglenbury. And against the circle of luminance, a thin, almost impalpable wreath of smoke seemed drifting before a draught of air from the fireplace. I looked again. No, it was not smoke. It was something with a defined outline. It was a wisp of muslin, air-light and almost colorless in its sheerness, but cloth nevertheless. And now, as I gazed unbelievingly, something else seemed slowly taking form in the moonlight, a pair of narrow, high-arched feet and tapering, slender ankles, unclothed except for the double loop of a bell-studded chains, which were mincing and gyrating, and flexible toes, while fainter than the feet, but still perceptible, the outline of a body, as fair as any that ever swayed to the tempo of music, showed against the black background of the darkened hall like a figure dimly suggested in impressionistic painting. Round and round, in a dazing but incredibly graceful dance, the vision whirled, the hem of the muslin skirt standing outward with the motion of the pirouetting feet, the tiny golden bells and the chain anklets sending out their fairy music. Morbleu, de Grandin whispered softly to himself. Do you see it also, friend Trowbridge? Do you see it? I began in a muted voice, but stopped abruptly, for a puff of passing breeze must have closed the shutter, cutting off the moonbeam as a theatrical spotlight is shut off by a stage electrician. The illusion vanished instantly. There was no longer an elfin, dancing form before the painted likeness of old John Aglenbury. There was now no sound of clinking anklets in the old house, no naked ankles. There were just a pair of sleep-disheveled men in bathrobes and pajamas standing at a stairhead and staring foolishly into the darkness of a deserted hallway. Hey, I thought I saw, I began, but again I was interrupted, this time by the unmistakable clatter of the handbell in Aglenbury's room. You thought you saw. Why do you doubt your own eyes, man? Well, I don't know. It could be anything. It could be a phantasma. It could be a bit of an underdone potato. Again, the handbells jangled, and we raced down the corridor to him and flung open the door. Monsieur Aglenbury, de Grandin gasped. Did anything come into your room? Dr. Trowbridge and I... The young man sat up in bed, grinning sheepishly at us in the double beam of our flashlights. Boys, I must be getting a case of the nerves. I never had the jumps like this before. Just a moment ago, I fancied I felt something touch my lips, like the tip of a bat's wing. It was soft as velvet and so light I could scarcely feel it. But it woke me up, and I grabbed the bell and I began ringing like a fool. Funny, too, he glanced toward the window. It could not have been a bat, for I took particular pains to nail the mosquito netting over that window this morning. Why, it's torn wide open. Sure enough, the length of strong netting, which our host had thoughtfully tacked across the windows of both our room and his, a precaution against the early spring insects, was rent from top to bottom as though by a knife. Humph, he muttered. It might have been a bat at that. To be sure, the Grandin agreed, nodding vigorously. It might, as you say, monsieur, have been a bat, but I think you would sleep more safely if you closed the window, sir. Crossing the room, he drew the casement to and shot the forged iron bolt into place. Bonsoir, my friend, he bowed formally at the doorway. A good night, and be sure you leave your window closed. So would you gentlemen like to look at the property down by the lake? Aglenberry asked as we finished our breakfast of bacon and eggs the next morning, and coffee and fried potatoes. Well, assuredly we would, Ned Grandin replied as he donned topcoat and hat, slipping his ever-ready automatic pistol into his pocket. The soldier's first caution should be to familiarize himself with the terrain over which he is to fight. And you, Trowbridge, take care how you consume those potatoes. We marched down a wide, curving drive bordered by pollarded willows toward the smooth sheet of water flashing in the early morning sunlight. We have one of the finest stands of native hardwood to be found anywhere in this part of the country, Aglenberry began, waving his stick toward an imposing grove to the right. Just the timber alone is worth, well, of all the copper-riveted nerve. He broke off angrily, hastening his pace and waving his cane belligerently as he tore off towards Dagmar. But no, he passed her right by. Look, see there? Some fool camper has started a fire in those woods. Hi there, you, hi, hey, what are you doing? Hurrying through the trees, we came upon a little clearing where a decrepit, weather-blistered van was drawn up beside a small spring. 2 moth-eaten appearing horses tethered to a nearby tree, and several incredibly dirty children wrestling and fighting on the short grass. A man in a greasy corduroys lay full length on the ground, a black slouch hat pulled over his eyes, while another lounged in the doorway of the van. 2 women in faded shawls and handkerchiefs, and an amazing amount of pinchbeck jewelry, were busily engaged, one in hewing down underbrush to replenish the campfire, the other stirring some sort of savory mess in a large, smoke-blackened kettle which hung over the blazing sticks. What the devil do you mean by building a fire here? Aglenberry demanded angrily as we came to a halt. Don't you know you're likely to start a blaze in these woods? Go down to the lake if you want to camp. There's no danger of burning things up down there. The women looked at him in sullen silence, their fierce black eyes smoldering angrily under their straight black brows. But the man lying beside the fire was not minded to be hustled from his comfortable couch. Too much of stone down by the lake, he informed Aglenberry lazily, raising the hat from his face, making no other move towards obeying the summons to quit. Too much of stone and sand. I like a piece of grass to lay on. I stay here, you see? By George, we'll see about that, replied our irate host. You'll stay here, will you? Like hell you will. Stepping quickly to the fire, he shouldered the crouching woman out of his path. He scattered the blazing sticks from under the kettle, and with a vigorous kick of his heavy boot, sapping the flame from the brands and kicking earth over the embers. Stay here, will you? Ha! We'll see about that. You pull your freight. Pull in a hurry. I'll have the whole gang of you arrested for trespass. Reclining gypsy leaped to his feet as though propelled by a spring. You telling me to put up my freight? You kick out my fire, you! Ha! I show you something! His dirty hand flew to the girdle about his greasy trousers, and a knife's evil flash showed in the sunlight. You think you make a fool of a Nikolai Brandovich, eh? I show you! And slowly, with a rolling tread which reminded me of a tiger preparing to leap, he advanced toward Aglenberry, his little porcine eyes snapping vindictively, his bushy eyebrows bent in an almost straight line with the ferocity of his scowl. Eh bien, monsieur le bohemian, Jules de Grandin remarked pleasantly. Were I in your shoes, sir? And very dirty shoes they are, too. I would consider what I did before I did it. Hmm? The gypsy turned a murderous scowl on him and stopped short in his tracks, his narrow eyes contracting to mere slits with apprehension. The Frenchman had slipped his pistol from his pocket and was pointing its uncompromising black muzzle straight at the center of the Romany's checked shirt. Mister, the fellow pleaded, sheathing his knife hurriedly and forcing his swarthy features into a semblance of a smile. I make it a joke, huh? I not mean to hurt your friend. No, I poor man, trying to make honest living by selling horses. I not mean to scare your friend. We take it to camp off of his land right away. Yeah. Oh. Pardon, my friend. I think you will, de Grandin agreed, nodding approvingly. You will take your so filthy wagon, your horses, your women, and your brats from off this property. You leave at once, immediately, right away? He waved his blue steel pistol with an authoritative gesture. Come, I have already waited too long. Try not my patience, I beseech you. Muttering imprecations in their nearly unintelligible tongue, showering us with looks as malignant as articulate curses, these gypsies broke camp under our watchful supervision, and we followed them down the grass-grown drive toward the lakefront. We watched them off the land, and then proceeded with our inspection of the estate. Now, Red Gables, much like our tightly property, was an extensive property, and we spent the better part of the day exploring its further corners. By nightfall, all three of us were glad to smoke a sociable pipe and turn in shortly after dinner. I was lying on my back, staring straight upward to the high ceiling of our chamber, and wondering if the vision of the night before had been some trick of our imaginations, when de Grandin's sharp, strident whisper cut through the darkness and brought me suddenly wide awake. "Trowbridge! Friend, Trowbridge! I hear his sounds. Someone is attempting entrance." I lay breathless there a moment, straining my ears for any corroboration of his statement, but only the soughing of the wind through the evergreens outside and occasional rasp of a bough against the house rewarded my vigil. "Rats," I scoffed. "Who tried to break into a house with such a reputation as this one's? Why, Mr. Selfridge told us even the tramps avoided the place as if it were a plague spot." "Aye, nevertheless," he insisted as he drew on his boots and pulled a topcoat over his pajamas. "I believe we have uninvited guests, sir, and I shall endeavour to mend their manners if such they be." There was nothing to do but follow him. Downstairs, tiptoe, our flashlights held ready, our pistols prepared for emergency. We stole through the great dark hall. We undid the chain fastener of the heavy front door, and we walked softly around the angle of the house. At de Grandin's direction, we kept to the shadow of the tall, black-branched pine trees which grew near the house, watching the moonlit walls of the building for any evidence of a housebreaker. "It is there, where the young Aglenberry sleeps," de Grandin observed in a low voice as he indicated a partly opened casement on the second floor, its small panes shining like nacre in the rays of the full moon. "I observe he has not obeyed our injunctions to close his sash in the night time. Morbleu, that which we did see last night might have been harmless, my friend. But again, it might not have been. My friend, look!" Stealthily, silent as a shadow, a stooped form stole from around the corner of the wall, paused huddled in a spot of darkness where the moonbeams failed to reach, then slowly straightened up, crept into the light, and began mounting the rough rubble-stone beside the side of the house. I felt like Jonathan Harker as I watched for all the world something like a great uncanny lizard from pre-Adamite days, clinging to the protuberances of the rocks with claw-like hands, feeling for toe-holds in the interstices where cement had weathered away. The thing slowly ascended, nearer and yet nearer Aglenberry's unlatched window. "Dieu de Dieu," de Grandin muttered. "If it be a phantom, our friend Aglenberry is in misfortune, for it was he himself who left his window unfastened. If it be not a ghost, parbleu, it had better have it said its paternosters, for when he puts its head in that window, I fire." I saw the glint of moonlight on the blue steel of his pistol barrel as he trained it on the climbing thing. Inch by inch, the creature, man or devil or puppy, whatever it may be, crept up the wall, reached its taloned hands across the stone sill, began drawing itself through the casement. I held my breath, expecting the roar of de Grandin's pistol each second, but a sudden gasp of astonishment beside me drew my attention from the creeping thing to my companion. "Look, friend Trowbridge, regardez, s'il vous plaît," he bade me in a tremulous whisper, nodding speechlessly toward the window into which the marauder was disappearing like a great black serpent into the air. I turned my gaze toward the window again and blinked my eyes in unbelief. An odd luminescence, as if the moon's rays had been focused by a lens, appeared behind the window opening. It was like a mirror of dull silver, or light faintly reflected from a distance. Tiny bits of impalpable dust, like filings from a silversmith's rasp, seemed floating in the air, whirling, dancing lightly in the converging moon rays, circling about each other like dust motes seen in the sun shaft through a darkened room, driving together, taking form. Literally out of moonlight, a visible, discernible something was being made. Spots of shadow appeared against the phosphorescent gleam. Alternate highlights and shadows became apparent, lining the outlines of a human face. A human face, a slender, oval face, with smoothly parted hair, sleekly drawn across a high, broad forehead. A face of proud-mouthed, narrow-nosed beauty such as the high-caste women of the Rajputs have. A moment it seemed suspended there, more like the penumbra of a shadow than an actual entity, and then seemed to surge forward, to lose its sharpness of outline and blend mysteriously with the darkness of the night prowler's form, as though a splash of mercury were suddenly thrown upon a slab of carbon. A moment of the illusion of light on darkness held, and then a scream of wire-edged terror mingled with mortal pain shuddered through the quiet night as a lightning flash rips across a thundercloud. The climber loosed both hands from the windowsill, clawed frantically the empty air above him, then hurtled like a plummet to the earth, almost at our feet. Our flashlights shot their beams simultaneously on the fallen man's face as we reached his side, revealing the features of Nikolai Brondovich, the gypsy Aglenberry had ordered off the place that very morning. But it was a different face from that of the Roman he had displayed when threatening Aglenberry or attempting to conciliate de Grandin. These eyes were starting out from their sockets, the mouth hung open with an imbecile, hang-jawed flaccidity, and on the gypsy's lean, corded throat was a knotted swelling, as though a powerful clamp had seized and crushed the flesh together, shutting off breath and blood in a single mighty grasp. Both de Grandin and I recognized the thing before us for what it was. Trust a physician to recognize it. Death is unique, and nothing in the world counterfeits it. This scoundrel had died before his body touched the ground. Nom de nom, de Grandin murmured wonderingly. And did you see it also, friend Trowbridge? I saw something, I answered, shuddering at the recollection. And what did you see? His words came quickly like an eager lawyer cross-examining a reluctant witness. It looked like a woman's face, I faltered. But nom de Dieu, yes, he agreed almost hysterically. A woman's face, a face with no body beneath it. Parbleu, my friend, I think this adventure is worthy of our steel. Come, let us see young Aglenberry. And so together we hurried into the house and up the stairs, hammering on our host's door, calling his name in frenzied shouts. Hello, what's up? His cheery voice responded. And next moment he unfastened the door and looked at us, a sleepy grin mantling his youthful face. What's the idea of you chaps breaking a fellow's door down to this time of night? Having bad dreams, are you? Monsieur, de Grandin stammered, his customary aplomb deserting him. Do you mean, have you been sleeping? Sleeping? The other echoed. What do you think I went to bed for? What's the matter? Have you caught the family ghost? He grinned at us again. And you have heard nothing, seen nothing? You do not know that an entrance to your room was almost forced? De Grandin asked incredulously. An entrance to my room? The other frowned in annoyance, looking quizzically from one of us to the other. Say, you gentlemen better go back to bed. I don't know whether I'm lacking a sense of humor or what my trouble is, but I don't quite get the joke of waking a man up in the middle of the night to tell him that sort of cock and bull story. Nom de chafleur! de Grandin looked at me and shook his head wonderingly. He has slept through it all. Friend Trowbridge, he has slept through it. Aglenberry bristled with anger. What are you fellows trying to do? String me along? Your hat, your coat, your boots, monsieur, de Grandin exclaimed in reply. Come outside with us. Come and see the vile wretch who would have slaughtered you like a pig in the shambles. Come and behold, we shall tell you how he died. And so, by mutual consent, de Grandin and I decided to withhold certain details of the gypsy's death from the coroner's jury the next day. And a verdict to the effect that the miscreant had come to his death while attempting to break and enter the dwelling house of one John Aglenberry in the night time, forcibly, feloniously, and against the form of the statute in which such case made and provided, was duly returned. The gypsy was buried in Potter's Field, and we returned to our vigil in the haunted house. Aglenberry was almost offensively incredulous concerning the manner of the gypsy's death. Nonsense! He exclaimed when we insisted we had seen a mysterious, faintly luminous face at the window before the would-be housebreaker hurtled to his death. You fellows are so fed up on the ghost lore that you've let this place's reputation make you see things which aren't there. Monsieur, de Grandin assured him with an injured dignity, it is that you speak out of the conceit of boundless ignorance. When you have seen 1/2, pardieu, 1/4, or 1/8 of the things that I have seen, sir, you will learn not to sneer at whatever you fail to understand. And that's so magnificent Monsieur Shakespeare did say, there are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in your philosophy. Yeah, well, probably, said our host, smothering a yawn, but I'm content to let him stay there. Meantime, gentlemen, I'm going to bed. Good night. And up the stairs he marched, leaving us to share the warmth of the crackling pitch-pine fire. De Grandin shook his head pityingly after the retreating youngster. He's the perfect type of that Monsieur Babbitt, he confided. Worldly, materialistic, entirely devoid of any imagination. Parbleu, we have them in France, too. Did they not make mock of Pasteur Legrand when he announced his discoveries to a skeptical world? Most assuredly, like the poor, the materialist have always with us. Ha. Oh, hey, what is that? Do you hear it, Trowbridge, my friend? Faintly. So faintly it was like the half-heard echo of an echo. The fine musical jangle of tiny bells wafted to us through the still, cold air of the dark old house. In there! 'Twas in the library it sounded, the Frenchman insisted in an excited whisper as he leaped to his feet and strode across the hall. Your light, friend Trowbridge! Quick, quick, your light! I threw the beam of my electric torch about the high-walled, somber old reading room, but nothing more ghostly than the tall walnut bookcases, empty of books and laden with only dust these many years, met our eyes. Still the soft, alluring chime sounded somewhere in the shadows, vague and indefinite as the cobweb darkness about us, but insistent as a trumpet call heard across uncounted miles of night. Morbleu, but this is strange, de Grandin asserted, circling the room with quick, nervous steps. Trowbridge, Trowbridge, my friend, as we live, those bells are calling us. Calling. Ah, Codu, there they are. He had halted before a carved panel under one of the old bookcases, and was on his hands and knees examining each figure of the unconventionalized flowers and fruits which adorned its surface. With quick, deft, questing fingers, he felt the carvings, like a cracksman feels out the combination of a safe. Nom de fromage, I have it, he called, in lilting triumph as he bore suddenly down upon a bunch of carved grapes, and the panel swung suddenly inward upon invisible hinges. Trowbridge, mon ami, regardez-vous. Peering into the shallow opening left by the heavy carved plank, we beheld a package carefully wrapped in linen, dust-covered, and yellowed with age. Candles, if you please, friend Trowbridge, de Grandin commanded as he bore our find in triumph to the hall. We shall see what secret of the years these bells have led us to. He sank into his armchair and began unwinding these linen bands. Ah, and what is it? He unreeled the last of the bandages and displayed a small roll of red Morocco leather, a compact little case, such as an elder generation of men carried with them for supplying needles and button and threads while traveling. Inside the wallet was a length of tough, age-tanned parchment, and attached to it by a loop of silk was a single tiny hawkbell of gold, scarcely larger than a bead, but capable of giving off a clear, penetrating tinkle as the parchment shook in de Grandin's impatient hands. I looked over his shoulder in fascinated interest, but I drew back with disappointment as I saw the vellum was covered with closely written scrawls, somewhat just resembling shorthand. Oh, de Grandin, regarding the writing a moment, then tapped his even white teeth with a meditative forefinger. This will require much study, friend Trowbridge. Many languages have I studied. My brain is like a room where many people all speak together. Out of the babble I can distinguish but a few words unless I bear my attention on someone talk. This, he tapped the crinkling parchment, this is Hindustani, if I mistake not. But to translate it will require more time than these candles will burn. Nevertheless, we shall try. And so we hurried to our bedroom, returning in a moment with a pad of paper and a fresh supply of candles. I shall work here for a time, he announced, reseating himself before the fire. It will be long before I prepare for bed. It may be well for you to seek repose. I shall make but poor company these next few hours. I accepted the dismissal with an answering grin, and taking my candle, I mounted the stairs to bed. Ah, bien, my friend. You do sleep like the dead. The righteous dead who have no fear of purgatory. De Grandin's voice roused me the following morning. The bright spring sunshine was beating into our chamber through the open casement, and a puff of keen breeze fluttered the trailing bedclothes, but my friend's face rivaled the brilliance of the breaking day. Triumph! He exclaimed, brandishing a sheaf of papers above his blond head. It is finished, it is complete, it is done altogether entirely. Attend me, my friend, listen with care, for you are not like to hear such a tale soon again. Lord of my life and master of my heart, this day is the fulfillment of the fate overhanging the wretched woman who has unworthily been honored by your regard. For this night I was bidden by my father to choose whether I would be married by the priest to the god Kandoka and become a temple Bayadir, and my lord well knows what the life of such a one is, or go to the shrine of Omka, god of destruction, and become Kurban. I have chosen to make the leap, my lord, for there is no other way for Amari. We have sinned, my lord, thou against thy people, I against mine, and what we did dare defy Varna and love. And when such love is forbidden between the races, Varna forbids it, the commands of thy people and mine forbid it, and yet we loved, and now our brief dream of Kailas is broken as the mists of morning break and fly before the scarlet lances of the sun, and thou returnest to thy people. Amari goes to her fate. By the leap I assure my sinful spirit of resting place in Kailas. For to the Kurban all sins are forgiven, even unto that of taking the life of a Brahmin, or giving herself in love to one of another race. But she who retreats from the leap commits a sin with each step so great that 1,000 reincarnations cannot atone for it. In this life the walls of Varna stand between us, my love, but perchance there may come a life when your Amari inhabits the body of a woman of the Sahib's race, or my lord and master may be clothed in the flesh of one of Amari's people. These things it is not given Amari to know, but this she knows full well. Throughout the 7 cycles of time, which shall endure through all the worlds and through all eternity, when worlds and gods themselves shall have shuddered into dust, your Amari's heart is ever and always inclined to the Sahib, and the walls of death or the force of life shall not keep her from him. Farewell, master of Amari's breath. Perchance we shall meet again upon some other star, and our waking spirits may remember the dream of this unhappy life. But ever and always, your Amari loves thee, Sahib John. Yes? I asked as he finished reading. And then? Parbleu, my friend, there was no then. Listen, you do not know India. I do. in that country, they do consider that the woman who goes to the bloody shrine of the god Omkar, hurls herself down from a cliff upon his bloody altar, attains to sainthood. It was that which this poor one meant when she did speak of the leap in her farewell note to her white lover. Kurban is the word in which their language for human sacrifice. And when she speaks of attaining Kailas, she refers to their word for heaven. When she says Varna stood between them, she did mean caste. Kodu, you English, you Americans, always you drive yourselves crazy with thoughts of what should and should not be done. Oh, nom de cook, why did not this Monsieur Eglinberry the elder take this Hindu woman to wife? If he loved her, and thumb his nose at her relatives and his fair-eyed English kin as well. 'Tis what a Frenchman would have done in like case. But no, he must needs allow the woman he loved to hurl herself over a cliff for the edification of a crowd of heathens, or undoubtedly stewing in hell at this moment. And while he ran overseas to America, and he built himself a mansion in the wilderness. A mansion, pardieu! A mansion without the light of love in its rooms, and the footfalls of little children on its floors. Nom de Dieu. A mansion of melancholy memories it is. A boss, such people. They deserve la prohibition, nothing better. De Grandin walked back and forth across the room in a fury of disgust, snapping his fingers and scowling ferociously. All right, I agreed, laughing in spite of myself. We'll grant all you say. But where does that get us as regards Red Gables? If the ghost of this girl haunts this house, how are we going to lay it? How should I know? He returned peevishly. If the ancient fires of this dead woman's love burns on the cold hearth of this sacred house, who am I to put them out? Oh, it is too pitiful that such a love as theirs should have been sacrificed on the altar of Varna. Cast. Hello, up there. Came a cheery hail from the hall below. You chaps up yet? Breakfast is ready. We've got callers. Come on down. Breakfast, de Grandin snorted disgustedly. He talks of breakfast in a house where the ghost of murdered love dwells. But, he turned an impish grin on me, I hope he has compounded some of those so delicious flap the jacks for us even so. No more potatoes for you, though, de Grandin. Dr. de Grandin, this is Dr. Wiltsey, Eglinberry introduced as we descended to the hall. Dr. Trowbridge, Dr. Wiltsey. Wiltsey is superintendent of the sanitarium. Sanitarium for the feeble-minded over there. He waved his arm in a vague gesture. And when he heard that Dr. de Grandin was in the neighborhood, he came for a consultation. It seems that... well, bother. You tell him your troubles, Wiltsey. Dr. Wiltsey was a pleasant-looking young man with a slightly bald head and large-lensed, horn-rimmed spectacles. He smiled agreeably as he hastened to comply with Eglinberry's suggestion. But the fact is, Doctor, he began as de Grandin piled his plate high with flap the jacks, we've got a damn peculiar case over at Thornwood. It's a young girl who's been in our charge for the last 12 years, ever since she was 10 years old. This poor child suffered a terrible fright when she was about 6. According to the history we have of her case, horses of the carriage in which she and her mother were riding ran away. She threw them both out and killed the mother, and, well, when they picked up the young girl, she was just one of them, God's little ones. She had no more reasoning about her than a 2-month-old baby. Now, her family's rich enough, but she has no near relatives, and So she's been in our care over at the Thornwood Sanitarium, as I said, for the past 12 years. Now, she's always been good as gold, scarcely any trouble at all, sitting on the bed or the floor, playing with her fingers or toes like an infant most of the time. But lately she's been acting up like the devil. Fact, I tried to brain the nurse. She tried to brain the nurse a couple of 3 nights ago, and she made a break in one of the matrons yesterday morning. From a simple, sweet-tempered little idiot, she's turned into a regular hellcat. Now, if she'd been suffering from ordinary dementia, I would... yes, very good, my friend, de Grandin replied as he handed his plate to Aglenbury for further replenishment of flapjacks. I should be delighted to look at your patient this morning. Parbleu, a madhouse will be a pleasant contrast to this never-enough-to-be-execrated place. Yeah, he likes my house, Aglenbury commented to Dr. Wiltsey with a sardonic grin as we rose and prepared to go to the sanitarium. The Thornwood Sanitarium was a beautiful, remodeled private country home, and differed in no wise from nearby estates, except that this park about the house was enclosed in a high stone wall topped with a chevaux de frise of barbed wire. How's Marianne, Miss Underwood? Wiltsey asked as we entered the spacious central hall and paused at the door of the executive office. As you can see, Doctor, it's 8 o'clock. I thought perhaps you would be done with this by now, but I see that you're going to be running us late. Yes, Miss Underwood. So please, how is Miss Marianne? Doctor. She's worse, replied the competent-looking young woman in nurse's uniform at the desk. I've sent Mattingly up to her twice this morning, but the dosage has to be increased each time, and the medicine doesn't seem to hold as well. Yes, Wiltsey murmured noncommittally as he turned to us with anxious looks. Will you come to see the patient, gentlemen? You too, Aglenbury, if you wish. I imagine this will be a new experience for you. Upstairs, we peered through the small aperture in the door, barring the demented girl's room. If we had not been warned of her condition, I might easily have taken the young woman to be asleep on the neat white cot for a person in perfect health. There was neither the emaciation nor the obesity commonly seen in cases of dementia, no drawing of the face, not even the flaccidity of the mouth as the girl lay asleep. Her abundant dark hair had been clipped short as a discouragement to the vermin which seemed naturally to gravitate to the insane in spite of their keeper's greatest care, and she was clothed in a simple muslin nightdress, cut modestly at the neck and without sleeves. One cheek, pale from confinement but otherwise flawless, lay pillowed on her bent arm, and it seemed to me that the poor little girl smiled in her sleep with the wistfulness of a tired and not entirely happy child. Long curling lashes fringed the ivory lids which veiled her eyes, and the curving brows above them were as delicately penciled and sharply defined as though drawn on her white skin with a camel's hair brush. Oh, le pauvre enfant, de Grandin murmured compassionately. At the sound of his voice, the girl awoke. Gone instantly was the reposeful beauty from her face. Her lips stretched into a square like a mouth of one of those old Greek tragic masks. Her large brown eyes glared fiercely, and from her gaping red mouth issued such a torrent of abuse as we might have been brought to blush to the face of the foulest fishwife in Billingsgate. Yes, normal indeed, Rick. Wiltsey's face showed a dull flush as he turned to us. I'm dashed if I can understand it. She goes on this way for hours on end now. Is it so? de Grandin responded. And what, may I ask, have you been doing for this condition? It appears more delirium than like dementia, my friend. Well, we've been administering small doses of brandy and strychnine. No, for the patient, doctor. Yes, for the patient, doctor. But they don't seem to have the desired effect, and the doses seem to have to be increased constantly. Yes, Dr. de Grandin's smile was slightly satirical. And has it never occurred to you to employ hypnotics? Hyoscine, perhaps, by example. By George, it did not, Wiltsey confessed. Of course, hyoscine would act as a cerebral sedative, but we'd never thought of using it. Very well. I suggest you employ a hypodermic injection of hyoscine hydrobomide. Dr. de Grandin dismissed the case with an indifferent shrug of his shoulders, but Aglenbury, moved by that curiosity which is akin to fascination felt by the normal person regarding the insane, looked past him at the raving girl inside the cell. And here an instant change came over the girl. From a cursing, blaspheming maniac, the girl became a quiet, sorrowful-looking child, and on her suddenly calm face was such a look of longing as I've seen children undergoing strict diet give some particularly toothsome and forbidden dainty. Young Aglenbury suppressed a shudder with difficulty. Poor child, Poor, poor little girl, to be so lovely and so hopeless. Oui, monsieur, de Grandin agreed moodily as we went down the stairs. You do well to pity her for the intelligence. The very soul of her has been dead these many years. Only her body remains alive. And pitié Dieu, what a life it is. Ha! If only some means could be found to graft a healthy intelligence animating a sick body into that so healthy body of hers. Oh, what an economy that would be. He lapsed in a moody silence, which remained unbroken during the drive back to Red Gables. The sun had gone down in a blaze of red against the western sky, and the pale new moon was swimming easily through a tumbling surf of a bank of foaming cirrus clouds when the deep-throated belling bay of a hound came echoing to us from the grounds outside the old house. Grand Dieu! de Grandin leaped nervously from the chair. What is it? Do they hunt in this country where the mating season is but blossoming into flower among the wild things? No, they do not, Aglenberry answered testily. Someone has let his dogs out of my land. Come on, let's chase them off. I won't have them poaching game here like that. Together we trailed out of the hall and walked quickly toward the sound of the baying, which rose fuller and fuller from the region of the lake. As we neared the dogs, the sound of human voices became audible. That you, Mr. Aglenberry? A man called, and a flash of an electric torch showed briefly among the new leaf thickets by the waterfront. Yes, yes, our host answered shortly. Who the devil are you? What are you doing here on my property? We're from Thornwood Sanitarium, sir, the man answered, and we saw the gleam of his white hospital uniform under his dark topcoat. The crazy girl, Marianne, got out about an hour ago. She got out, and we're trailing her with the hounds. She went completely off her head after you left this morning. She fought so they couldn't give her the hypo without strapping her. After the injection, she quieted down, but when the matron went to her room with dinner, she suddenly woke up. She threw the woman against the wall so hard she cracked a couple ribs, and then she got clean away. She can't have gotten far, though, running over this broken country in her bare feet. Oh, hell! Aglenberry stormed, striking a bush beside the path with a vicious slash with his stick. It's bad enough to have my place overrun with gypsies and gossiped about by all the country yaps in the county, but when the lunatics get to making a hangout of my property, it's too much. I hope you find her, he flung back over his shoulder as he turned toward the house. And for the Lord's sake, if you do get her, keep her at Thornwood. I don't want her chasing all over this place. Monsieur, de Grandin began, but Aglenberry cut him short. Yeah, I know what you'll say. You want to tell me a ghost woman will protect me from the lunatics just as she did from the gypsy, don't you? You, my friend, de Grandin began with surprising mildness. I do not think you need protection from the poor, mad little girl. But, he broke off with his sentence half spoken as he stared intently at an object hurrying towards us across a small clearing. Good God! Aglenberry exclaimed. It's her! The crazy girl! Seemingly gone mad himself, he rushed toward the white-robed figure in the clearing, brandishing his heavy stick. I'll handle her, he called back. I don't care how violent she is, I'll handle her. In another moment, he was halfway across the cleared space, his thick walking stick poised for a blow which would render the maniac unconscious. Now, any medical student with the most elementary knowledge of insanity could have told him a lunatic is not to be cowed by violence. As though the oaken cudgel had been a wisp of straw, the maniacal girl rushed towards him, then stopped a scant dozen feet away and held out her tapering arms. John, John, she called out softly. A puzzling, exotic thickness in her pronunciation. John, Sahib, it is I. It is I, John. Sahib, it is I. Aglenberry's face was like that of a man suddenly aroused from sound slumber. Astonishment, incredulity, joy like that of a culprit reprieved as the hangman knots the noose about his neck shone on his features. The threatening club fell with such a soft thud to the turf, and he gathered the madwoman's slender body to his breast, covering her upturned face with kisses. Amari, my Amari, Amari, my beloved, he crooned in a soft, sobbing voice. Oh, my love, my precious, precious love, I have found you. I have found you at last. The girl laughed lightly, and in her laughter there was no hint or taint of madness. Not Amari, Marianne in this life, John, she told him, but yours, Sahib. Always, John Sahib, yours, whether we stand beside the Ganges or the Hudson, beloved through all the ages. Ah, yeah, you got her, sir, The hospital attendant and a pair of bloodhounds tugging at the leash before them broke through the thicket of the clearings farther side. "That's right, sir! Hold her tight till we slip the straitjacket on her!" Aglenberry thrust the girl behind him and faced the man. "You can't have her," he announced uncompromisingly. "She's mine." What? The attendant stammered, and then turned towards the underbrush and called to some invisible companions. "Hey, Bill, come here. There's two of them." "You can't have her," Aglenberry repeated as the two more attendants reinforced the first pair. "She's going to stay with me. Always." "Now look here, sir," the leader of the party argued. "That girl's a dangerous lunatic. She nearly killed a matron this evening, and she's been regularly committed to Thornwood Sanitarium. We tracked her here. We're going to take her back." "Over the dead corpse of Jules de Grandin," the Frenchman interrupted as he pressed forward. "Parblez me. I am an authority here. I shall be responsible for her conduct." The man hesitated a moment, then shrugged his shoulders. "Yeah, it's your funeral if anything happens on account of this. Tomorrow Dr. Wiltsey will start legal proceedings to get her back. You can't win." "Can I not?" The little Frenchman's teeth gleamed in the moonlight. "My friend, you do not know Jules de Grandin. There is no lunacy commission in the world to which I cannot prove her sanity. I do pronounce her cured, and the opinion of Jules de Grandin of the Sorbonne is not to be lightly sneezed upon, I assure you." Aglenberry said, "Pick her up, friend. Pick her up and bear her to the house, lest the stones bruise her tender feet. Dr. Trowbridge and I will follow and protect you. Parbleu!" Here he glared defiantly around him. "Me, I say nothing shall separate you again. Lead on." "For heaven's sake," died Grandin, I besought as we followed Aglenberry and the girl toward the house. "What does this all mean?" "Morbleu," he nodded solemnly. "It means that we have won $100,000, friend Trowbridge. No more will the ghost of that so pitiful woman haunt this house. We have earned our fee, and no more will anyone sneeze upon me, Jules de Grandin." Yes, but—" I pointed mutely toward our host as he strode through the moonlight with the girl in his arms. "Oh, that!" "Oh," he laughed a silent, contented laugh. "That, my friend, is a demonstration of the ancient fires of love which die not. No matter how much we heap them with the ashes of hate and death, the ancient fires of love will never die. The soul of Amari, the sacrificed Hindu girl, has come to rest in the body of the lunatic Marianne, just as the soul of John Aglenberry the elder was reborn in the body of his namesake and double, John Aglenberry the younger. Did not the deceased Indian girl promise that she would someday come back to her forbidden lover in another shape? Parbleu, but she has fulfilled her vow. Always have the other members of Aglenberry's family been unable to live in this house, because they were of the clan who had helped separate the elder lovers. Now, this young man, knowing nothing of his uncle's intimate affairs, but bearing in his veins the blood of the older Aglenberry, and on his face the likeness of the uncle too, must have borne within his breast the soul of the disappointed man who ate out his heart in sorrow and loneliness in this house which he had builded in the American woods. And the spirit of Amari, the sweet Hindu girl, who was kept safe from the house from alien blood and from members of her soulmate's family who would have robbed him of his inheritance, did find near at hand the healthy body of a lunatic whose soul, or intelligence if you please, had long since sped away and entered thereinto to dwell on earth again. Did you not see sanity and longing looking out of her eyes when she beheld him in the madhouse this morning, my friend? Sanity? But yes, it was recognition, I tell you. Her violence, 'twas but the clean spirit of the woman fighting for mastery of a body long untenanted by an intelligence. Were you to attempt to play a long disused musical instrument, Trowbridge, my friend, you could but make poor work of it at first, but eventually you'd be able to produce a harmony. So it is in this case. The spirit sought to use a long disused brain, and at first the music she could make was nothing but noise. Now, however, she has seen the mastery of her instrument, and henceforth the body of Marianne will function as that of a healthy young woman. I, Jules de Grandin, will demonstrate her sanity to the world, and you, my friend, shall help me. Together we shall win. Together we shall make certain that these lovers, thwarted in one life, shall complete this cycle in happiness. Bien. He twisted the end of his blond mustache and set his hands at a rakish angle on the side of his head. It is possible that somewhere in space there waits for me the spirit of a woman whom I have loved and left in another life. I wonder when she comes, if I, like the lucky young Aglenberry yonder, shall wake and remember and understand.